Der Führer der deutschen Jugend hat das Wort.
I grew up under the Nazis, and I was forced into the Hitler Youth at age 10, as we all were. And that was highly oppressive. It was very dictatorial, and it made a rebel out of me because I wasn't going to subscribe to that.
He says, we had no alternative but to join it. It was mandatory. As you were growing up, you would go in the Hitler Youth, whether you liked it or not. You didn't have the option to stop out.
Hier stehen 65.000 Hitlerjungen aus allen Teilen des Deutschen Reiches.
He was always anxious about some of the things that had been done during the war, and he wondered how it would happen to them. And they still insist now what happened in the hell camps, in the camps for all these political prisoners and whatnot, how they got to that stage. And a lot of them, we said, you can't live next to it and not know it's there. And they say, we honestly didn't know what was in there. We were not allowed near the place, and we didn't know whether it was people or whether there was people doing special jobs, but that was it. So you've got to take it as they tell it.
And both you and Dieter were not old enough to fight.
No, not at that stage. He was a year younger than me, you see.
And you were about 19, 20 when this was going on?
Yeah, well, 20 when I was in Hamburg. So I was 17 and a half when I joined the Air Force. That's the lowest age you can join it.
So let me go to 1945, and there was a exchange turnaround in terms of culture and in terms of daily life, insofar as, of course, the dictatorial oppression of the Nazis was gone, and it was bad. And then we got into the occupation forces. And now I was learning English, don't forget. That was mandatory at my school, and I was in grade probably, at 45 I'd be in grade 6 or 7. And I liked English, and I had the opportunity then to listen to the stations like BFN, British Forces Network, AFN, American Forces Network.
And enjoy life on the safety side. From the capital city of Bavaria, this is AFN in Munich.
And I learned a lot, not only in terms of language, but also in terms of culture. These people had freedom. They could laugh at themselves, etc. A lifestyle that appealed to me, which is something that I had not known. So there was a total reversal. And I liked the prospect of staying with it. And as I say, I liked the English language, and I was going to learn it. And this is part of the reason why when I saw Bert on the Ulster River in his canoe, that I could see the RAF emblem on it, and I knew it was a canoe that belonged to the RAF.
The first time I took the canoe out, I went to the boathouse, found out which was the RAF ones, and took this one out and put it in the river. So I'm going down this water and conscious of somebody catching me up. And I looked, and there's this fellow stripped to the waist, bobble hat on, obviously a German. They all look alike, you know. Yeah. You look at him and think, he's not English. He's not got an English face. And he came up alongside of me, and he's getting right close, you know.
Now here's a guy in civilian clothes, and he's having a little trouble because he's going upstream against the current. And one man in a very light canoe has difficulties that way. Now, I was a member of a sports club right by the river, and I saw that. And I said to him, "Are you English?" And he said, yes. I said, "Well, would you like some help?" He said, "Yeah, well, maybe." So anyway, this is how we got together.
Nevertheless, there were various anti-fraternization laws that Bert was governed by as somebody there who was in the RAF. He was not really meant to have a lot to do with local people. And so he took a bit of a risk, really.
He was smart enough to ignore that. He didn't pay any attention to that. He's a strong individualist. So you just don't go and tell him what to do and what not to do.
And he said, "Do you mind if I speak to you?" So I said, "No, not at all." And of course he said, well, I've heard of the non-fraternisation band. I said, well, that only is for males and females. He said, well, will you talk to me? I said, yeah. He said, oh, I thought it would be forbidden. Oh, no. I said, they can't forbid you to talk, surely. What's your problem? So he says, you are English. And that's when I looked out and looked at the roundel on the front of the thing. And I said, well, I think so. Been a bit cheeky, wasn't it?
He and I, just two young guys, you know, we were hitting it off. And as a result of that, we started to go canoeing. We attended movies. We attended sports events, etc., etc. He came to our house and met the family and so forth. So that's how it all started, how it all developed. And we had a great time, really. Just two young guys getting together, totally non-political. And there was no animosity. And don't forget now, by this time, we are talking about 1949, all the wartime propaganda on either side had pretty much been put to rest. And, you know, he never really totally subscribed to it. He's too smart for that, and neither did I.
I said, what can I help you with? So he said, well, I'm a student at school studying English. He said, and the professor that's teaching us, I guarantee he's never been to England. So I said, well, you speak reasonably good English now. So he said, well, I learnt it during the war. He said, at fear of my life, because you're forbidden to listen to any English or American broadcasts. Strictly forbidden. He says, now I used to have to get under the bedclothes at night with a little radio and listen to the music. And he said, I learnt my English from them. I said, well, it's excellent, really. It's as good as we would talk, like us Yorkshiremen will, you know. So he said, well, if you would help me with some pronunciations. He said, are you learning German? I said, well, I am, yes. I said, there's a class going on the camp, and I go a couple of times a week. And he said, this is the funny part. He said, what's the book you're learning? I says, Roodkapje. Do you know what Roodkapje is? Little Red Riding Hood. Rood for the red, cap. And I said, well, them's the only ones we've got. We've got them in mass, you know, so everybody can have one. It's just something to learn to speak the language, that's all it is.
Yes, he was learning German as much as I wanted to learn English. And that just is an indication of his open mind and his interest in things. And we had a great time. Of course, he stumbled quite a bit. And that was hilarious on occasion.
Of course, we've had lots of laughs since, you know. He used to ask me about this book, Roodkapje, Little Red Riding. He said, what part are you up to now, Bert? I say, well, the wolf's in the bed, got the grandma out, he's eating grandma. I said, he's in the bed. And he said, well, come on then, in German, he said. I said, oh, and the Roodkapje had gesagt, was dein Augen so groß, you know, your eyes are so big. And he says, besser dass ich sehen kann. I said to him, and the wolf schläft und schnarcht. And I thought, what does it mean? He said it's the wolf slept and snored. And we have a laugh. So I say, you better watch yourself, I'll be snarching at you.
So here you are in Hamburg. You've made this lovely new friend. You're teaching him to speak English. He's teaching you to speak German. And presumably you go canoeing together often.
Oh, yeah, yes. We often went down the same river. And we had a liking for ice cream in that time. And there was a lot of peddlers on the banks selling ice cream. So we used, well, one of the things we used to do was I'd be paddling my canoe and he'd be paddling his. And I'd make it to the board, to the ground, you know, and jump out and run to the thing and say, bitte, 2 Eis am Stiel, bitte. That's 2 ices on a stick. And it used to be a race every time we went out to see who got to the ice cream man first. Silly things you do, don't you?
We had a good time together, And it lasted until such time that he was transferred away, in which case, after he transferred, we were still in touch by letter. Of course, no internet in those days.
I went to another camp lower down in Germany, Celle, and we started corresponding with letters. And then after about 5 or 6 months, they suddenly stopped. And I sent one to his house, never got a reply or anything like that.
And we corresponded until such time that I emigrated to Canada. Of course, it caused an interruption. And after that, the first year was pretty darn tough in Canada. I wound up in a bush camp in northern British Columbia for the winter, where it was -40, -45. But in addition to that, I had lost a briefcase that had some personal information in it, among other things, my address book. I had lost his address, to be honest with you. And that's really when it started that we lost contact with one another. Additionally, we were at an age where we were just getting ready to get married and start families.
And so in the intervening years, we're talking about the next 40 years, you heard nothing from him.
Well, probably it was that time, yeah. 40 years, I heard nothing.
And did you think of him often?
He came into my mind, but it was just another episode in life, you know, as far as you're concerned. But as far as I was concerned, I thought, well, he's probably got a bit fed up now. Not much more to talk about. And there's hardly any chance of him meeting me. I don't even know what he's doing.
And for you, you thought that was that, until we skip forward 40 years. Tell me about that phone call.
All right. Now, I had retired, and I was in Victoria here. And Ingrid and I were downtown, and we came back, and there was a message on the answering machine. Anyway, here is Bert.
Kein Schwein ruft mich an, keine Sau interessiert sich für mich.
It wasn't until recently, well, I say recently, it's been about 10 or more years now, that I went to computer classes. And as we left the computer class, both the wife and I had a computer, had bought one. And when we left, she said to me, Bert, this teacher, would you bring something next week for anything to do, you know, some sort of project? I got home and I said to my wife, I said, what can I take? I'm a student like everybody else, you know, I'm only learning. What can I take? So she said, what about your friend Dieter? Do you think they'll find him? I said, I don't know. I'll see. So I jotted on a piece of paper his full name, Dieter Borzecker, his last known address, which was Alsenstrasse in Hamburg. And I gave her this paper. She said, I'll see what I can do. And the following week, when we went to the computer class, lo and behold, she called me over and she said, would you believe I've found 2 people with the same name? One is in Germany, and I thought, well, that'll be him. And one's in Canada, on Vancouver Island. So I thought, the German. Dialed the number for the German, and this bloke came out speaking German. I said, can Sie English sprechen? And he said, Nein. Oh. I said, my German was a little bit rough then. When you don't touch it for a while, you lose a lot of it. I could understand a lot what they were saying, but I couldn't put it into words. So we found out that he'd not lived in Hamburg, and I said, well, entschuldigen bitte, that's, please excuse me then, entschuldigen bitte for asking, I'm sorry to have bothered you, and I'll pursue the one I'm doing. So he said, okay, and I thought, you know, puffing and panting, I'm not having any luck here, am I? So I rang the second number, and it's an answer machine. And the voice that came over was saying, well, hello there. you've reached Dieter and Ingrid Bozecker. We don't happen to be in at the moment, he said, but if you leave your name and address and everything, we'll arrange to get back to you. And I thought, that's not him. That's not him at all. Speaking broad Canadian accent, you know, perfect English.
Here is Bert, and he was trying to contact me. I was thrilled to bits.
All right. So I give him my name, and I said, I'm looking for Dieter Bozecker, that was resident in Hamburg, Fuhlsbüttel. I said, and if it is, I found you, you bugger.
So I immediately picked up the phone and called him back. And he may have recognized the voice, but not the accent.
And about an hour later, the phone rang, and it was him. But he had this same Canadian accent, and I had my doubts about whether it was him or not. So I said, well, could I ask you a couple of questions? And that'll verify whether you are. So he says, well, yeah, of course it could. I says, what happened when we came to the station at Langenhorn, and we had to get into the station? When I was going back to camp and you was going home, I said, and we couldn't stop laughing. So he said, oh, yeah, yes. I said, I was in my lederhosen, short trousers, and big stockings with diamonds on them and things like that. He said, I had my thing. And he said, you people, you forces people, you used to get into the cinema for nothing. He says, where we had to pay. He said, you also got on the station for nothing. You could go the first 200 kilometres for nothing. I says, yeah, and the trams in the street. He said, well, if you remember, when you walk past, there's a guard on the door. And you used to go, Englander, you know, touch your brow, Englander. And I come up behind him, Englander. And he just ushered us through. And we got down to the platform, and I couldn't stop laughing because he's in all his leather stuff, see. I even laugh now when I think about
it. We got together again. Now, what I had planned for that year 2001, I was going to take Ingrid to Singapore on a vacation, but we canceled that, and instead we went to Oakham and met the Fitches and reestablished our old friendship.
He said, I'm coming to England, and he made a date, and he came, and I went down to Gatwick, and I said, how will I know you? He said, oh, I haven't changed, I've put on a bit more weight, he said, but you can't miss Ingrid. Well, I'd never met her before, because she wasn't married, he wasn't married, she wasn't even a girlfriend, she wasn't in the picture, you know, so he said, oh, look for the big hat, he said, she'll have a big hat on. I said, what, one of these South American sombreros? No, not like that, he said. She'll just have a big hat on. As it happens, we went to the airport there, and there was two doors. We were in with all the normal people, and then where they discharged from the aircraft, they came up this corridor and out through this door. And there was glass panels in this door and glass panels in the other. And I was looking to wait to see how long it took them to get off the aircraft. And this woman came round the corner with this big hat on, and she looked and she went. She waved like that, and I thought, well, who's she waving to? She had spotted me. I don't know how he'd told her what I looked like or anything, but she'd spotted me.
Come on, let's kiss again, like we did last summer. Yeah.
How was he that week that you spent here? Did you get on just as you had before?
Yeah. Same sort of thing. We're out supping it, you know, drinking, like you would do. Oh, we didn't get inebriated, but we had our fair share. He likes gardening, he likes flowers, and I took him to this place, and he was a bit amazed about all this topiary that was in it. And where else did I take him? We went to this pub and that pub and the next pub, you know.
And it was just like old times?
Yes, it was. Meals. And of course he met all the family I didn't have a family before. He met all the family, all the kids, and the kids put on meals. We was in one house one day, another house another day, you know. He was a bit bowled over with it all.
And so that was about 10 years ago. Have you seen him since?
That was in 2001. And he kept saying while he was here, "You've got to come to Canada. Have you been to Canada?" I said, "No, I've been a number of places, but I've never been to Canada." "You've got to come," he said. Well, I said, "OK, I'll do that." So about 6 months later, I got told by the boss man there, my file of facts, "We're going to Canada."
This is your wife, Edith.
Yeah, wife Enid. I says, "What do you mean we're going to Canada?" She says, "Well, I got this from the kids today," she said. "The families, you know, my eldest lad and eldest girl and all the others in their own families, because they'd all shared the nest." She said, "They've bought tickets and there's £1,000 to spend from the family." I was flabbergasted. But I went.
You say goodbye, I say hello, hello, hello.
Have you seen him in the flesh since then?
No. I see him on the picture. He's not been back here, and I think he's got a bit fed up with aircraft. He said he did a lot of flying when he was in the mining industry, doing this business he was doing on the ocean bed. He was always flying from place to place. He said, and it's awful. It becomes a routine, you know. He said, I'd never want to fly again. I've had enough. But there again, I hear of him every day, you know.
That's wonderful. What do you talk about?
Mainly what the families are doing. He's been talking about his knee for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
You've got a friend in me.
Now that we are on the internet and we can see one another, not only talk to one another, but see one another, it's just like the other party sitting across the table from you on Skype. So he's on Skype, I'm on Skype, and we meet daily for an hour and discuss the events of the day and whatever pertains to our families, etc., etc. So that is a treasured moment in the day, and we haven't missed one. The odd one where something comes up, you know, we're not available type of thing, but it's rare. And I think we treasure our hour.
Here you were, these two young lads, very similar
So, at the time,
but
enemies, and he said it. Well, he even says now. He said it's people that do this. He says you've got the bosses that are herding them around. He said, but the people have the ability. Most people are genuine people, you know, genuine folk, and you can liken yourself to me. You still have breakfast and lunch and tea, and you still go to the pictures and you do this and you go to the park and you go to shows. You like music. What's the difference? There isn't any, except one's German, one's English. It's like that in the 1418 war when there was a football match arranged, don't they? People don't want to cut each other's throats. You don't want to do that. It's the big people at the top that are causing all the problems, aren't they? The average citizen will get on with what he's doing and be thankful for what he's got and look at other people and you can compare them with yourself. It's happening to us all. Why go mad like they do periodically and start killing everybody? Mad, isn't it?
You got a friend in me.